Alright, YouTube, coming on the heels of a somewhat narrow victory for the global communist movement over Hofer in Austria comes actually quite a handy victory, as something like 60% of Italians that voted no on the referendum that they wanted to hold there. The Prime Minister, Renzi, who has resigned, he's out currently, so Italy is currently in a little bit of turmoil. That's to be expected. The referendum that was offered, essentially, was essentially a de facto scrapping of their bicameral system in favor of having just one upper house, sort of a system adopted by Germany and some of these other states in the European Union. In order to get things moving, that what happens currently in Italy, and this is a problem, just that the referendum was draconian and wouldn't have actually solved some of the underlying problems with their economy that people are actually worried about. The problem is that because the Senate there and this upper house share equal power, things get strangulated. We have this problem here in the United States. What have we gone through for the last 4 years? Complete strangulation. Almost nothing gets accomplished. What little does is widely agreed on by the population to be a negative thing. Anytime there's a good idea, it gets repeatedly altered and sent back and forth between the House and the Senate here. It's a problem. I mean, it is. But at the same time, Renzi's so-called reform wasn't really a reform. It was an attempt to consolidate more power in the hands of the centralized government that would become even more centralized there. It would become more tyrannical. It would become much easier for them to do basically whatever they want to do, including, and this is probably why they offered the referendum, they were probably leaned on, Renzi and others, by Merkel and Hollande and people like that. Hollande is out, by the way. He won't seek re-election. Marine Le Pen is doing pretty well over there in France. So Italy's joining them. Italy is joining with the French and the British right now. And the Austrians have abandoned them to side with, I guess, the Merkel, the Fourth Reich Chancellor, or whatever the hell you want to call her. But Italy defeated their referendum, because what this would have done is remove the Senate, essentially, turn it into an advisory body for the most part, and give its actual power to local officials. It would have been great for maybe the EU's establishment. I guess the idea was to crack down on Eurosceptic movements, structure things in such a way that they can use Germany's money temporarily to keep the populists at bay by making it look like things are going well under Italy's economy. But it's not going well for Italy's economy. They're being forced to use currency that's massively overvalued because Germany happens to control the bloc. Germany and soon, hopefully, not France. But these countries with a much higher general productivity in turn are sapping the strength of places like Spain, Italy, and Greece. The thing is, it doesn't work for anybody. Nigel Farage told you this years ago. It doesn't work for the more wealthy nations within the EU. They end up having to dole out much of their productivity to keep the less wealthy afloat. It doesn't work for the less wealthy countries because they're never going to be able to further develop and become more wealthy, because they're constantly pegged to a currency that doesn't work for their economic situation. It's strangulated anyway. The Italian people were right to vote no here. And Marine Le Pen, UKIP, and all these other groups, the Five Star Movement spearheaded the no vote in Italy. They're a Eurosceptic movement to the core. And they're all celebrating right now. They're ruining the loss of Hofer in Austria, although it wasn't a crushing defeat. Yesterday, according to the exit polling, it looked like it was going to be. It's actually a little bit closer than that, but no, unfortunately, Hofer did lose. So Austria will remain a vassal of Germany. Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Basically, it is Germany. It's the same thing. Austria is sort of this weird constructed state that wasn't allowed to reunify with them. They should have just said, oh, fuck it, we're going to have constant open border situation with the Germans after the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's like, who cares about it? Probably convinced people that a Fourth Reich was rising if they ever joined forces, but they are part of the same cultural core. But Italy was right to vote no. This will really harm the EU further. Yesterday it wasn't clear whether it was going to be no or yes. Some people suggested, oh, they're going to vote yes on the referendum because of higher turnout, or something like that. Oh, young people are going to save the Euro parties in Italy. Looks like the opposite happened. Looked like they actually abandoned the pro-Euro forces in favor of the Five-Star movement, which is good. So thank you to the Italian people. You've taken the first, rather large, also, step in uncucking yourselves and actually taking back your national sovereignty, which puts you on the side of the UK, possibly of France, depending on what happens in their next election, and forms a much more powerful anti-EU bloc. Now, you don't have to get rid of the EU entirely. You could just reform it, but you'd have to weaken it so much that it wouldn't really be a union of any kind. It makes more sense just to fucking get rid of it, because it's not working for anybody in Europe. Literally, there's no, I mean, it helps people who aren't from Europe more than it helps any European, because it allows the Germans to allow in unlimited migrants and then divvy them up with other states and then threaten them if they won't take their quota of so-called refugees. It's actually little more than a piggy bank for people like Merkel. Germany's economy is soaring into hyperdrive right now, largely because they get unskilled labor from the Third World and from the rest of Europe, and they get to excise money from people, and they dole out pennies in return. It's sort of like the system we have here with welfare. Most of the money that we pay in taxes into the welfare system gets squandered away by bureaucrats either for their paycheck or their pet projects. It never even makes it to the intended recipients. How much less effective and how much worse is it when you have local, national, and post-national authorities all bureaucratically strangulated, working in tandem within the European Union? It's less efficient than our inefficient system. That's the problem. Anyone saying, oh, well, these populist far-right parties, oh, they're going to fuck the poor, they're going to kill minorities, they're horrible people, they're going to, I don't know, there'll be constant wars. If the EU falls, there'll be World War III in Europe. No, there won't. You honestly think that the Germans are suddenly going to invade the Sudetenland again if the EU falls? That's funny. I don't think that's likely to happen. It's funny, these countries, before the EU was actually formulated, these nations seemed to be at relative peace there after the Second World War. The EU forms, things go fine for a while, and then it just gets worse and worse. This is the nature of governments, why it has to be constrained. It's why states have to compete. It's why things have to be reformed from time to time. Governments get too large, too overburdensome in one way or the other, and the state can collapse under that dead weight. Honestly, we see that happening here. It's not we don't have a problem with productivity. We have a problem with the fact that we pay a huge proportion of our productivity funding our ever more burdensome government. And Europe has had extra centuries to build up those burdensome regulations and laws and paper after paper and dictate after decree. It's even worse over in Europe. I'm not surprised things are falling apart over there. You need to dissolve the EU. You need to strongly reform all of your national parties, all of your national legal systems. You need to ban anything like the EU from ever existing again, and go back to competing with one another. Friendly? Yeah. Be friends with one another, trade with one another, but also compete. Because these less wealthy economies will then be able to develop. The more wealthy economies won't have to pay out a bunch of welfare to the less fortunate states. Which doesn't even, does it actually get to the impoverished in a place like Italy or Spain anyway? No, it doesn't get to the impoverished. It doesn't help them at all. There are Greek girls right now selling their body for the price of a ham sandwich. So I'm pretty sure the EU's welfare system is not exactly helping the states that are receiving those funds. And I'm pretty sure it's getting squandered on other things that aren't even really necessary. Make those states pay for what they have for themselves. Italy can do much better outside of the EU, just as the UK or France. From the most wealthy to the least wealthy, none of these states benefit from EU membership. You can have travel between European states without a European Union. It's not necessary. You don't have to codify anything. These states just have to come to an agreement. Yeah, they're just not going to require a passport. If you want to cross Germany to France, Netherlands to Belgium, Poland to the Slovakia, yeah, go ahead. We don't care. But to allow one European state, namely Germany, to pump itself full of Islamic migrants and use them as essentially a leverage issue against all other European states on political issues. Oh, well, we'll flood you with immigrants if you don't do what we want you to do. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not what most people envision the EU becoming, maybe 20 or 30 years ago. Pretty sure that's not exactly what, it's probably what the framers had in mind, yeah. They want to build a Fourth Reich. It's quite clearly what they want to do. They want to build, essentially, US 2.0, which won't work. Not in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, you can see the Europeans forming a United States of Europe. They can't even form a currency bloc without things falling apart. So it's good. Italy should leave the EU. France should leave the EU. The UK should definitely invoke their articles and leave. Anyone who's still stuck aboard the EU train when it crashes off a cliff is going to suffer a lot more than what little suffering commensurate comes with leaving it now. That would be my advice. That's about all. Peace out.